Welcome to Sex Positive Gaming. I'm Annie, and I thought I'd do things a little differently with this video. Normally when I release a list of top things, there is a lot of data that I collect to explain why a game is ranked where it is. This video is going to be almost entirely subjective. You all wanted to know what I liked this year, so here it is. These are the 10 categories I'm going to talk about today. This is based on a lot of feedback from you in the YouTube community, as well as the suggestions from my patrons and my Discord channel. I'm going to talk a little bit about each category and the game that I chose. I totally expect many of you all to disagree with me, and that's totally cool. One of the best parts of this journey since I launched the channel almost 11 months ago has been how reasonable and respectful most of the conversations have been about some of these highly contentious topics. So feel free to let me know what you think, but be careful about the YouTube censors. YouTube absolutely wants to continue to sell controversial topics like discussions of sexual content. They just want to do it in a way so that they can pretend that they don't. Feel free to post on the Patreon page or message me directly if you feel your take is too nuanced for YouTube or if your post didn't show up when you posted it. I promise it wasn't me who deleted it. Speaking of censorship, as always, all of the links will be posted on my Patreon in the order that I talk about things because that's what YouTube currently requires of my videos. I talk about this in every video, but I still get so many messages asking for a list of games or to have the titles visibly shown in the videos. I used to do both of those things, but getting suspended makes me cry, so it's just not gonna happen. Sorry. So romance is a pretty amorphous word. I mean, technically it could apply at least loosely to every game in this industry, but for me it's about the plot of the romantic relationship taking priority over all the other flavors and the rest of the story. A primarily corruption-themed game is not going to spend as much time developing the relationship, just like a story focused on saving the world is sometimes going to take priority over the relationship. Just ask Gwen Stacy. I reviewed Avalon back in June, and honestly I thought it was just going to be another pretty harem visual novel. Instead I was presented with real relationships, real choices, no harem, and the ridiculous premise of a giant cat living in an apartment. I mean, wouldn't there be scratch marks all over the walls and furniture because panthers use claw marks and feces to mark their territory? Fortunately for the developer, Lockhart, this is my pick for best romance game. Not most realistic depiction of the Panthera genus. If you're looking for a slower paced slice of life romance, then I highly recommend this game. It's not the flashiest or the most interactive, but it is a wonderful and sometimes bittersweet story with multiple endings. That is available for PC on Steam, and for PC, Mac, and Android on itch.io and their Patreon. There are certain flavors in this industry that are guaranteed to cause controversy. NTR is close to the top of that list. For those unfamiliar with the flavor, it revolves around the main character potentially losing their loved one to another person. If you're interested in learning more, I have covered this in previous videos, including one where I delve into the question of, why is NTR so popular? In Pandoras Box, you play as both a male and female character that are in a relationship together. With the male character, you explore various submission themes, while the female path takes on a corruption focus. Both aspects would make for a decent visual novel on their own, and I actually covered this title back in May in my video exploring the femdom flavor. Combined, these two flavors make for an increasingly dark and surreal experience. Usually NTR games take a very predictable path, especially when it comes to the state of the protagonist relationship at the end. Pandoras Box does an excellent job of subverting expectation when it comes to how the story and ending unfold, adding in multiple other flavors including feet and impregnation. But I don't want to spoil the story too much. This is a completed title with multiple endings, with one of those endings already being explored in the sequel, Pandoras Box 2. Pandoras Box is available for PC, Mac, and Android for free on their Patreon. Harem games represent the biggest flavor category currently in our space, with more than half of the games in development falling under this classification. How do I pick the best harem game other than my game of the year? Spoilers. Fortunately, one of the most popular harem games completed in the last 5 years was finally released on Steam, Dreams of Desire Definitive Edition. Is it cheating to add a game that was originally finished in 2018? Probably. But this Steam release will allow so many more people to be exposed to this dark mind control mystery for the first time. With the addition of new renders and animations, this game also offers something new for players already familiar with the story as well. Check out my review from November if you'd like to know more, but the renders and animations look great for a game that was first finished 3 years ago. Dreams of Desire Definitive Edition is available for PC, Linux, and SteamOS on Steam, and for PC, Mac, and Android on their Patreon. So I've gotten some pushback about my next category, Best LGBTQIA+ Game. People have told me that this isn't a flavor and that by grouping all these games together is demeaning. I agree that it isn't a flavor, and have actually covered each of these categories separately over the last year in flavor lists and individual game reviews. However, these were also some of my least popular videos, as individually, all of these flavors are much more niche. As our industry continues to grow in scope, quality, and diversity, I would love to have more categories next year. That brings us to the yaoi visual novel, Dramatical Murder. Set in a dystopian cyberpunk Japan, you embark on an adventure full of gangs, a virtual reality video game called Rime, and the mystery that surrounds it. There are animations, especially in the VR world, and anime-style art for the characters and backgrounds. The story really reminds me of the No. 6 light novel and anime. The combination of the plot, the 80s synth music, and fantastic Japanese voice acting makes this game a must-play if you like the male homosexual, sci-fi, and mind control flavors. This story is definitely not your generic romantic visual novel. So just be prepared when you play Dramatical Murder, available for PC on Steam, but you will need to pick up the patch on Just USA's website, which I will link to with everything else. Monster girls and furry characters appear in a lot of video games in our industry. I don't think that there are any flavors that are better examples of how our fantasies are absolutely not the same thing as reality. I don't know, maybe all these people trying to ban and censor safe and healthy sexual outlets actually think catgirls are real. I first covered Ravager back in May in my video covering monster girl games. You play as a newly hatched dragon in a fantasy world devoid of any meaningful kindness or compassion. So basically like working for Amazon, but with elves and other fantasy creatures in addition to Bezos the Goblin King. As you struggle to survive and grow your power, you can choose the paths of compassion, guile, or wrath. As the game progresses, you will encounter characters based on various fantasy RPG archetypes, furries, and monster girls that you can add to your army and sometimes your growing harem. Ravager is available for PC, Mac, SteamOS, and Linux on Steam, with Android versions available on itch.io and their Patreon. What makes a best girl a best girl? Generally, that is completely dependent on the show that you're watching or the game that you're playing. So how could I possibly pick one character, male or female, from all of the games released or completed in 2021? This was actually one of the most requested categories by all of you, so I had to figure something out. Which leads us back to the question, what makes a best girl a best girl? I picked Demi from Subverse for many reasons. For those unfamiliar with the game, Demi is the android that pilots the starship that the MC uses, the Mary Celeste. Demi also assists in helping to romance and interact with the various other potential waifus in the game. So she is literally and figuratively your wingman. Demi is also voiced by Bordeaux Black, who has been a tireless supporter of the industry. Most importantly, the character is smart, funny, and I couldn't imagine anyone else I'd rather have at my side in a galaxy far, far away. Sorry, Chewbacca. Regardless of how you may feel about Subverse, I think Demi personifies what we all most crave from a best girl, accepting us for who we are and what we desire. You can check out Demi and the other members of the crew of the Mary Celeste in Subverse, available for PC on Steam. Continuing with my section of completely subjective picks, we have Best Art in a Game. Seriously though, this is a really funny category given that most games in our industry use off-the-shelf renders of Daz and Honey Select models. However, we are seeing more and more hand-drawn art in addition to the occasional incredible quality games out of Japan, like Dona Dona, Let's Do Bad Things Together, or Suzukuri Dungeon, Karen in the Mountain. Like I said, this is really subjective, so make sure to let me know what you would have picked for each of these categories. In cases like this, I really think the why of a pick is much more meaningful than the pick itself. After a lot of deliberation, I chose Space Rescue Code Pink. This is an updated version of the old school 1980s adventure games like Leisure Suit Larry and Space Quest. This game is goofy, bright, and sunny, and really feels like what I expect Scooby-Doo would have been like, if not for the content restrictions. I mean, what do you think a bunch of teenagers driving around the United States in 1969 in a windowless van were up to when they weren't solving mysteries? Probably the same stuff you'll be up to in this game as you try to solve its mysteries, just with more space stuff and, sadly, currently no Great Danes. Not even a Dynamite. So maybe that's why I went with a ray of sunshine this year with Space Rescue Code Pink, available for PC, SteamOS, and Linux on Steam, and for PC, Mac, and Android on their Patreon. Music in our industry is currently really hit or miss. Many games don't have any at all. I mean, it makes sense as there are so many indie developers in our space, and music is an added expense. However, the right songs can make a game an even more amazing experience. As for the money, A Fistful of Dollars was made at a cost of around $200,000. And if you adjust for inflation, that is just under $2 million today. There are plenty of games in our industry that have brought in way more than that, and their soundtracks are very, very limited, or even non-existent. I'm not saying you're gonna find the next Ennio Morricone on Fiverr, but I do believe that our experiences would be enhanced from even a little more effort and attention to this part of gaming development. That being said, this was one of the easiest picks for me. In 2021, I played and reviewed over 200 games, and there was a lot of good music, but only one game caused me to stop playing so that I could listen to a song in full. That was when I entered the coffee shop in Love of Magic, and I heard Control by Hyrule. I'm not sure how much developer Droid Productions spent on the soundtrack, but it is a fantastic assortment of Celtic, dance, and chill music that fits amazingly well with this modern-day urban fantasy adventure that feels like it's straight out of the Dresden Files. This is an awesome soundtrack that makes a great game even better, even if there is no song that is ever going to get me to like poker. I'll link to the wiki where you can listen to the entire soundtrack if you want to check it out. Love of Magic is available for PC, Mac, SteamOS, and Linux on Steam, their Patreon, and itch.io, and for Android on itch.io and their Patreon as well. I played a lot of games this year. I mean, this is basically my job at this point, and hopefully the amount of time I've put into this channel shows. I've had a lot of fun playing many different games, and honestly my current favorite, Cloud Meadow, doesn't qualify as a 2021 release. That being said, there are two games from a developer that I really enjoyed this year. One was completed in 2021, and one premiered in 2021, and I had a great time with the first, and I'm really excited for the second. I first reviewed Once in a Lifetime back in August, and going in, I really expected this to just be another harem visual novel with honey select characters. The animations and renders are decent, there isn't really a lot of music, and not all the romanceable characters are really fleshed out, but the story is fantastic. Insane, but fantastic. I was shocked at how much fun I had. When the developer, Charybdis' next title, Eternum, was announced, it immediately had my curiosity. When I found out it was going to be a gorgeous, sci-fi, cyberpunk version of Sword Art Online, it had my attention. While it is still too early for a review, I can tell you that this game is already an improvement in music, mechanics, and animations. If the story manages to be even as close to as engaging as Once in a Lifetime, this could be a sleeper hit of 2022. Once in a Lifetime and Eternum are both available for PC, Mac, Linux, and Android on their Patreon and itch.io. I've used the phrase Game of the Year many times since the channel launched in February, but I never really defined what I think that means. Since we have no way of reasonably tracking sales and revenue across all platforms, what makes Game of the Year the Game of the Year? Is this just going to be another subjective pick like Best Girl? Fortunately, I have a really detailed metric for calculating overall popularity on Steam, which I talked about in my top 53 Steam releases of 2021, and we can see the overall patron numbers in the adult gaming category of Patreon. With these two datasets, there is one completed game that is the clear pick for Game of the Year for 2021. And I do think that any pick for Game of the Year needs to be completed. I was pretty sure that Treasure of Nadia was going to be my Game of the Year for 2021 when I reviewed it in September. The animation, story, and gameplay put it in a category far beyond anything else completed this year. My concern was just, will it be completed in time? Fortunately, Treasure of Nadia completed on Patreon and released on Steam in November. I was actually shocked at how well it did on Steam, given it had less than 3 days between announcement and release. I mean, the wishlisting process is there for a reason, but who am I to tell the developer, NLT Media, what to do? They are doing fine on their own, and they have made what is the must-play game of 2021. Seriously, I was having so much fun with the story towards the end that I almost felt like the relationships and interactions were getting in the way. Almost. What first feels like a Tomb Raider or Indiana Jones-style adventure quickly transforms into the Goonies, as you and your expanding harem compete with forces way more capable and way more competent. My only real complaints are how the romanceable female characters are incredibly same-ish in their body types and completely indistinguishable from one another in how they enjoy interacting with you and each other. But I guess that's just an aesthetic. But like I said, this is my must-play game for 2021. Treasure of Nadia, my game of the year for 2021, is available for PC, Mac, SteamOS, and Linux on Steam, as well as for PC, Mac, and Android on their Patreon. There you have it. Try not to take any of these picks too seriously. I hope we're all here to have fun and explore our favorite flavors in safe and healthy ways. I mean, I love feedback and I'm going to look forward to hearing from all of you. I do totally expect that I'll get a lot of posts and comments asking me why I didn't include various games that won't count as a 2021 release, but by the time I'm in this deep in a video, only about half of you are still watching. So to those of you still watching, thank you. You're the ones that have been most instrumental in the growth of this channel, and I really appreciate that. I also need to give a shout out to my best girls here for December of 2021. Thanks so much to Apple Orange, Bob Sellers, Avexeron, June, Lockhart, 3XXX, Trude Perkins, and Tyler Hunter. I wouldn't have my new setup without the support of you and other patrons. As the channel continues to grow, I think we'll figure out what the categories for next year's Game of the Year video should be. But until then, let me know what your favorite games and experiences of 2021 were. We've had a lot of extra time to spend indoors over the last few years, and 2022 looks like it's going to continue that trend. So also let me know what you're most excited about coming out. Most importantly, if there was a game that really touched you or spoke to you, consider reaching out to the developer and letting them know. I really appreciate when you all do that for me, so I'm positive that they would love to hear from you too. Happy 2022, and until next time, no shaming, just gaming. Thanks to all this month's supporters on Patreon. I wouldn't have been able to do this without you.